Welcome back to another edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, our partners impossible. I am happy today. I'm not Kent Swanson. I'm not your normal host, but I get a host today, so you guys will see me struggle through all of that as always when I have to do this. But I'm happy to be joined by Trevor Sikkema of on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey of PFF. Trevor, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Matt. You're doing great so far. So just trying to give you a little positive reinforcement, help the confidence and make sure that you're good to go. You're doing great, my friend, but it's great to be here with you. I'm excited to talk a little Chiefs football here.
Man, what is this? I'm being uplifted by my co-host and not being torn down. This is crazy. I don't know how to deal with this. I want to start first. Just like, how was your draft weekend? Nothing about the Chiefs or anything. Just, how was the draft for you? Did everything go, kind of as you expected? Everything go well?
Dude, it's awesome. Shout out to everybody who watched the PFF live streams that we did over all 3 days. I mean, we had so many people in the chat, specifically on day 3, which is awesome for us. Like, I feel like, you guys, I know, get into the nitty gritty of a lot of the draft stuff as well, but it's like, okay, night 1, round 1, everybody knows these players. We've talked about them for forever. Day 2, all right, here's some of the guys. It's like, oh, okay, like I'm actually higher on this person than some other people out there. I actually like this bet, all that stuff. But like day 3 is where you really get a lot of football fans who are just like, hey, I don't know about this player. Tell me about this player. Give me some PFF stats on this player. We had a lot of people in the chat with us for day 3, which I was very, very excited to see. So that made it a lot of fun. So shout out to everybody who joined the chat and joined the live shows with us. It was a blast as always.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, day 3 of the draft is kind of like the most fun to cover because like we'll be live for it too. And at that point, like, yes, people want the information on the guys being taken, but everybody's a little bit looser. Come day 3, everybody kind of understands. We're in the middle of the day on a Saturday. Like it's, if you guys want to put on a penguin suit and do cartwheels out in the outside of a brewery, go ahead. And that's may or may not be what we had did. So yeah, it's a good time. I'm glad that you guys had a good time with it too. You guys were live a lot because you guys had all during the draft. I know, like right before the weekend before the draft, you guys did that big, long, full mock draft. Everybody coming in. So you guys did a lot of content over that.
That was something that we had never done before. That was on NFL Stock Exchange channel. Myself and Connor Rogers, we did a 6-hour, 7-round mock draft live stream for all 256 picks. And it was a little bit of a sprint at the end. We kind of realized, like, we kind of had a hard out because we planned our Saturday. We're like, okay, this is going to take a long time. It's going to be 6 hours, whatever. But there was sort of like, we kind of like had a hard out and we didn't think that we were going to go as long as we were. And so like when we got to round 7, I was like, all right, this team, they drafted this. I'm picking this player. And then we were kind of like moving on. It's like, all right, here's the total draft calls. But that was a blast as well. Again, shout out to everybody who got in the chat for that one. It was really cool. Connor and I actually chose 2 charities that we love. And we said, hey, all the super chats in the show for this live stream are going straight to, we're just going to split it down the middle. It's going to go to these 2 charities that we chose. And so like, shout out to everybody for that. It was not only a lot of fun, but it was cool to see a lot of people donate to a really great cause.
Perfect. No, we love that. We love that. Okay. Let's move on now. Now it's time to, rip off the Band-Aid here. Kansas City Chiefs draft. What do we think of it? So, we kind of run down. I'm going to try to do this off memory because I'm going to get bad host and it pulls up. We got Josh Simmons in round 1. Then they come up with Omar Norman-Lott in round 2. Round 3, Ashton Gelati and Noel Williams. Round 4, we got Jalen Royals. We have a small trade up. I believe it was into round 6 for Jeffrey Bassa. And then rounding out the draft with Rashard Smith, running back out of SMU. That should be the entire Chiefs draft class. It'll be embarrassing if I messed that up at this point in time. But what do you think of it?
This show is going to be really easy for me because I love this draft. Sometimes I have to go on podcasts and people want to hear my thoughts and like I don't love the draft hall and I have to sort of be like careful. It's like, hey, you're inviting me on this podcast. Obviously, your listenership is fans of this team, and I didn't like what they did in the draft. But this one's going to be very easy. The Chiefs got an A grade for me, so they were tied with for second because I did have 2 A+. I gave the Panthers an A+, and I gave the New England Patriots an A+. But right after that, Kansas City tied with a handful of teams that I thought did an excellent job in this draft. Not only did I think that they drafted the right players for their scheme, players that I think fit what they really needed and what they want to do, they were able to hit a lot of needs, and they were able to draft pretty well versus my big board, to be honest with you. It was a lot of guys who it was plus value. Specifically players like Jalen Royals was an excellent pick. In my opinion, I thought Rashard Smith was an excellent pick, Jeffrey Bassa. So like those day 3 selections, to me, I thought that they got players who, even independent of where I thought they were going to go, were a lot higher on my big board than where they got selected. But then I also like the landing spot for them. So this is an A draft for me. I absolutely love the top to bottom.
Awesome. No, yeah, and like, I mean, I came away with the same thought process. Like, hey, where I have all these guys ranked right now, we're getting, pretty much plus value or right on value with some of these guys here. This is exactly what you want. And then you look at the positions and then the way the Chiefs went about it. Hit offensive tackle. The biggest need for this team since, I don't know, since Eric Fisher was kind of shipped off. And then you come back and you get some pass rushers. You get a corner that fits exactly what, Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo love on the back end. You round it out with some higher upside guys on day 3. So, like, I thought they kind of checked all the boxes. Let's go through. We don't have to hit on every single draft pick. We'll talk about some of, the big names here and just some general themes. So what were your thoughts on Josh Simmons? Obviously, I don't think you're a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what his knee's doing at this point in time. However, on the field, what did you think of, Josh Simmons and how that kind of worked out well for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think he had a chance to be the top offensive tackle taken in this draft. If he plays out that whole season and he's fully healthy, especially knowing that Ohio State went on that national championship run. I mean, like, look at how the stock was inflated. Sounds wrong. Elevated is probably the better word for Donovan Jackson, right? Where Donovan Jackson, I think, was viewed as more of like, okay, like a second, third round pick. And then he was forced to kick out to left tackle when Josh Simmons got hurt. Ohio State goes on this national championship run, and Jackson looks okay at offensive tackle. I still absolutely think he's a guard at the NFL level, but it's like that run, that national championship, that college football playoff run against some of the best competition and winning a championship is something that elevated his stock to getting taken in the first round by Minnesota at number 24. He gets taken even before Josh Simmons. And so if Simmons were fully healthy, I really do believe that he would have had a chance to be taken ahead of Will Campbell, taken ahead of Armand Mambu, with Kelvin Banks, these guys that got picked in the top 10. The question mark is just, hey, I loved him through the first 5 games of this past season, but let's face it, they're basically the 5 easiest games that Ohio State played in their schedule. So it's not like he went through the gauntlet that Ohio State had as the year went on during their championship runs against Michigan and through the college football playoff, all that stuff. And so that was something that is just missing from his scouting report. Then, of course, there's a knee injury, right? He's a massive dude. He carries a lot of weight on him. He plays in the trenches in the NFL. Anytime that's the case, when you are a bigger dude, when you have a lower body injury, it's tougher on your body. You're just carrying more weight. You're being more explosive with more weight. And so you always have to sort of take that into account. And just like you said, talk to the actual doctors that can give you the prognosis that he's going to be all right. But as long as you tell me that the knee checks out, steal. I still had him, all of that to say, I still had him 18th overall on my big board. Yeah. So to get him at number 32, I think it's a perfect situation because, with them signing Jalen Moore, they don't have to play him right away if his knee's not ready. And I think that's the important part of why this pick makes a ton of sense. So I'm a big fan of Josh Simmons. I had him as OT5 going into the season, thinking that he was going to have a good year. And then this season ended up being even better than I thought it was going to be about 4 or 5 games in. So I thought he played well. I thought he was playing closer to his potential. And I think the Chiefs got a good one at the back end of the first.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably my 4th podcast now where I'm going to, try not to go too long on Josh Simmons. I love the player. When I go back and watch him every time, there's just like a certain elegance to how he plays tackle, and just comparing that to Chiefs offensive tackles of recent years. I mean, the day 2 guys of Lucas Niang, Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamataia, there's just a difference in how he plays compared to those guys. Those guys, all good athletes. You can see the potential, but there's just like an elegance that Simmons has. And that's, why he's going in the first round. I had him, I think, is for the Chiefs specifically as my second offensive tackle, because I don't think the Chiefs would have been in on Will Campbell just with the arm length things. That's just something that the Andes will just not do. So I had him as my OT2, and then to see him there at 31 and then 32, it's like, yeah, that's the easiest pick I think one can make. I think he's a phenomenal player as long as he's healthy. And hey, fingers crossed. It sounds like the early reports out of rookie camp he's a little ahead of schedule, and so we'll see how that plays out. We need to move on to day 2. We got to talk on this one because myself included, and a lot of people here at KCSN were not down on, but at least have questions about Omar Norman-Lott with the lack of overall reps that he has, being a little bit more of, even when he does play, it's a lot of stunts, it's a lot of loops with that Tennessee defense. And so we were like, hey, we don't dislike him necessarily, but this might be a little rich for us. But I know you are a big fan of him, so kind of tell me how you think he fits with the Chiefs and why you like that pick.
Yeah, if you're looking for him to be a complete player and a 3-down player, like he's not quite that yet. But you bet on, I think, the gifts that he has, and that is a NFL level first step. I mean, when he gets off the line of scrimmage, he is exploding into interior offensive linemen. I think the hands are big, they're fast, they're violent. For him to stay clean, for him to stack and shed, to get off blocks, to hit you with a club swim or club arm over, whatever you want to call it, getting into the backfield, being that one gap penetrating, attacking defensive tackle is something that he does incredibly well. He didn't even have 100 snaps against the run this past season. The whole season that Tennessee played, which got into the college football playoff in that first game where they played Ohio State, they just didn't have him on the field for it. And I think that that's a strategy for Tennessee, and it's one that worked really well for them, but it didn't exactly help Omar Norman-Lott development into being a 3-down player, because even if he was better in run defense, I don't know how many more run defense snaps he would have gotten, because they just had these like hockey's full substitutions of their defensive line to keep a lot of these guys fresh. And so, yeah, a lot of what he's doing is stunts and games and things to keep him clean and to get his momentum going and all that kinds of stuff. But you can still put him in those situations to succeed in that way in the NFL. And I think he has the athleticism, the explosiveness, the natural leverage, all of that to continue to be a backfield player. Well, hopefully he gets a little bit more well-rounded and you could put him in on more downs. 88.3 pass rush grade against true pass sets, 18.9% pass rush win percentage. I mean, those are extremely high numbers for an interior defensive lineman. Those are the kind of numbers that you normally only see with edge rushers having the opportunity to win one-on-one all the time. And so Omar Norman-Lott's put in that situation to win one-on-one, but man, he just does so often. And so I am such a sucker for a attacking 3-technique defensive tackle who has the athletic gifts that Omar Norman-Lott does. And that's why, like, I absolutely would have taken this guy in the second round, because understanding that it's a bet, like you're taking a bet on a player who, again, is not as well-rounded as maybe you'd like. But when you think about the draft, I think people, when they think about the draft, they like to feel safe, and safe doesn't really exist in the draft. You could pick number 1 overall and that guy could fail. That guy could bust, right? And when you look at players like this, I'd rather, you don't want to make a huge living off of just betting like these huge bets all the time, because you're going to get burned and you probably won't be around a long time as a general manager. But when it comes to Omar Norman-Lott, this was a player who, specifically in this class, I was comfortable with saying anywhere on day 2. Don't really care. I'd take him anywhere on day 2 and I'd feel great about it. This is a bet that I'd be willing to make for a player that has the gifts that he does.
Yeah, and I think, like, if we look at kind of how the draft was unfolding too, a lot of interior pass rushers. I mean, we're kind of coming off the board at that point in time. I think Shamar Turner had just gone off the board a couple picks before that. You would start to lose guys. So if you're sitting there and you're the Chiefs and you say, okay, what did we, not that you're replacing stuff 1-to-1, but what is something that we did lose this past offseason? And it was Tershawn Wharton. You lost kind of like your rotational pass rusher on the interior to play next to or give Chris Jones a little bit of rest. If you want that guy, that type of player, you were running out of options relatively quickly if you're the Chiefs. And so Omar Norman-Lott, from that aspect, 100% makes sense. And then to your point, there are these athletic upsides and flashes that are all over the place. Like, for a guy that I do think is still trying to like tie it all together, because he just has such minimal reps, right? Like, not minimal, but like it's just very short spurts from Arizona State to Tennessee. But he shows some really good like flexibility for a 300-pound guy. Like, the amount of times that I saw him just bend around or twist and step through in between a guard and a center, whether he was stunting or not, it's like, okay, not a lot of guys his size can do that. So I definitely see the upside aspect to him. And I think putting him in that Wharton role, especially earlier in Wharton's career, where it was just like, you're more of a disruptor rather than a guy we're trying to get to win 1-on-1. You're just in there to cause a little bit of chaos and let Chris Jones and let George Karlaftis tee off. I definitely see the pathway there for that. So I'm glad that there are people that can talk very highly of him on the upside, and not, because I think we, as on the lab here, we've been not necessarily negative on him. It's just like, hey, here's our concerns, and I wanted to make sure we balanced it out. So I was very happy to get, somebody on that was much higher on him, I think, than we were here. All right, let's see, what do we got next? Okay, we don't got to go through everybody here, but like between Noel Williams and Ashton Gelati, did you like both those guys? Which guy of those two do you think could have a earlier impact for the Chiefs?
I did, because I think that they're the types of players that Kansas City likes, right? I mean, you look at Ashton Gelati, I mean, he's like 75% glutes. I mean, like, he's just like so powerful in the lower half, and he's going to treat offensive linemen like they're sleds, and he's just going to, he's going to get his arms in front of him. He's going to lock in. He's going to bull rush you into the quarterback. And like, that's what he did at Louisville. He's very explosive when he gets down in his stance because of that. And it's just like these players that are so dense in the lower half and so powerful with how they get off the ball and the leg drive and the strength that they have there. Like, that feels like it's sort of a Kansas City staple and what they gravitate towards when it comes to their defensive linemen. So Gelati is somebody who I think can, play certainly as a heavy-handed 5 technique defensive end for you, but like you could even reduce him inside a little bit. I know he doesn't have great length, but he's got that power to be able to hold up on the line of scrimmage. And so that power player and that versatility that he could have, I think really is going to shine through in Kansas City's defensive line. I think that he's going to be a decent playmaker for them as a rotational guy. And then Noel Williams kind of, that same way. I mean, look, he had a lot of interceptions. A couple of them were gifts, so I think that you have to sort of like take that with a grain of salt a little bit. Interceptions aren't always telling the full story, but this is still somebody who can play that press man coverage role. He can be physical with wide receivers. He likes to play that bump and run type of coverage. And so again, he felt like his demeanor, how he approaches the game, how he plays the game, and the physical style in which he plays felt very Spagnuolo of what they have as their defensive backs and how they like to play their outside corners. So to me, the reason why I like those two guys, independent of, okay, this is what they bring to the table, I think their scheme and maybe more importantly, like mentality fits, like how both of these guys approach the game of football and how they like to play their styles leans into what I feel like Kansas City has been over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's with Gelati. Something I was a little disappointed in myself. I didn't make this connection beforehand. He had the same defensive line coach at Louisville, Mark Hagan, that George Karlaftis had at Purdue, because that whole coaching staff obviously came over. And so Gelati and Karlaftis actually know each other. They had trained together. And as soon as the pick was made, I was like, yeah, he kind of reminds me of Karlaftis. And then I listened to some of those press, like, oh, yeah, that's kind of why you remind me of this, because you have the same coach. I mean, similar build, just a little bit smaller. So he made sense. And then to your point of Noel Williams, like, yeah, he is exactly what Steve Spagnuolo always talks about. And he gets up there, he says, we want a physical guy that's smart, that can disrupt people at the line of scrimmage, don't really care about the speed, and then show us the ball skills. And the Chiefs corners over the years maybe haven't had the best ball skills, but Spags always gets up and talks about it. So again, he's drafted. I'm like, yeah, these guys make a ton of sense. Now, I don't know if Noel Williams will have much space right now on the team. That's a pretty decent, cornerback room for the time being. But starting next year, the entire 2022 draft class there, all those corners are coming up at the end of their contract. So we will see what he does. We get a couple day 3 guys here. So I just want you to tell me your favorite day 3 pick the Chiefs took. Which guy of the Bassa, Brashard Smith, and then Jalen Royals are you most excited for to see what they can do?
Okay, so like I said, I like all 3 of these guys, so I want to say that right off the bat. But Brashard Smith is the guy that I'm the most excited about because he's something that's different in their running back room, and who he is as a receiver out of the backfield. I almost said a wide receiver. He used to be a wide receiver, and then he converted over to running back. But you see, his ability to run routes very sharply and set defenders up very well when he is coming out of the backfield, and just who he is as a receiver, how he can make you miss, some of the agility that he has. It's very different than what they have with Carson Steele and with Isaiah Pacheco and these guys that are just sort of these brutes where you put the ball in their gut and you just want them to run forward as much momentum as possible. They'll lower the shoulder. They'll get you the tough yards, all that kinds of stuff. They didn't have the changeup really in their lineup that I felt like they could go to last year. And I feel as though Brashard Smith is going to be that player. I mean, look, I'm not like saying that he's exactly what Clyde Edwards-Helaire was because, Edwards-Helaire, they draft in the 1st round. Brashard Smith, they draft in the 7th round. So obviously, like, it's different innately. But I think this team drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire because of not just what he was as a runner, but, like, what he was as a receiver for that 2019 LSU team. Like, he was also the receiving back out of the backfield, and they felt like they were getting the best of both worlds of a back who could not only impact the run game, but also the pass game. And obviously, he didn't pan out for them in that regard. And I still think that's what's been missing from their running back room is somebody who could be a true weapon as a receiver out of the backfield for them. And I genuinely believe that Brashard Smith can be that guy. So I don't know their running back room off the top of my head, but like, I would not be shocked if he makes the 53-man roster as a 7th round pick, just because of how he brings just a different skill set from what they have and something they absolutely need to an area of their team that is very valuable when it comes to improving the passing game. So, I think the world of Brashard Smith. I think he's very talented.
The fit there, again, it's like very perfect for what they have. Because, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, they bring in Elijah Mitchell. And just, we don't know, again, health is a giant concern there. And you don't know what his athleticism is going to be once he comes back. So, like, that's probably your top guys that you're competing with. And Carson Steele's this pseudo running back, fullback that's, again, another flavor. So there's clearly a path for this team to find a dynamic runner to go with, you assume, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco are, safely on this roster. And it's whether, is Elijah Mitchell healthy? Is he ready to go? Is Brashard Smith ready to take that step? And then you lean into that receiving it. They missed having Jerick McKinnon around, right? Like there's a big gap between what Jerick McKinnon provided as a receiver, especially, before his final season where he was clearly slowing down a little bit, just age and all the injuries were catching up to what they have when Pacheco or Hunt are out there. It's quality receivers, but they're not the same. They don't go out there and run the more intermediate or advanced routes that running backs get. So Brashard Smith makes a ton of sense from a fit perspective for this team. I also find it hilarious that his coach at SMU, Rhett Lashley, was watching the Chiefs when he was inviting him over and said, hey, you remind me of Isaiah Pacheco. So let's see if we can do that. I'm like, you watched the Chiefs running backs and you thought he reminded you of Isaiah Pacheco. That's a funny one because Jerick McKinnon's right there and not near as angry at the ground.
I was going to say, like, I don't agree, but hey, like if it worked, it worked, I guess, if it got to this point.
Yeah, I got him to probably running back at SMU, so I can't complain too much, but I keep hearing that quote. I'm like, what Pacheco were you watching? Because that man is just stomping the ground as he goes. Like, Brashard Smith is I don't know. Rhett Lashley's good at his job. A lot better as a football coach than I am, so who am I to say what he is talking about? All right, so we got an A. We got an A draft out of that. I'm with you. I gave him an A. I liked pretty much all the picks down the way that I can see they can all work. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the remaining weaknesses on this team.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
It's playoff time, and if you're still just watching games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competitor, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to the KC Laboratory. I hope everybody that is watching the video got to enjoy another fantastic ad read from Tucker D. Franklin. The D stands for professional. I am here with Trevor Sikkema of PFF. We are talking about the Chiefs draft class here. Oh man, Tucker, I need a second. That was a good one. That was better than the first round.
Good.
Too.
It was very good.
All right, so we finished up the Chiefs draft class here, and now we're kind of moving forward. We're rolling forward. So I just want to ask you, you're looking at this Chiefs roster and where they set, I guess, generally how they lost last season, embarrassingly in the Super Bowl. Where do you still see like the biggest holes in this roster that they might want to address before the season starts?
Yeah, I guess this is a good question here. I mean, in theory, if all the wide receivers are healthy, like you feel good about it. We didn't really touch much on Jalen Royals, but sure. I do like Jalen Royals in this group. I think that he's different from what they have. I wish they would have gotten more of like a X type of receiver on the team, but I mean, their cards are on the table, if you will, I think, with this wide receiver group. Clearly, they didn't blow it all up. So, like, I look at wide receiver and it's like, all right, like, I think they're fine. but you also have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So they basically just like make it work and it'll be fine. So like looking at the depth chart, I feel like they could be better there, but they'll probably be able to make it work. Depth along the defensive tackle spot. I mean, they need, somebody of like Omar Norman-Lott or Jerry Tillery or like whoever it is to be able to step up for this team. You mentioned having a pretty, or just at least a deeper rotation of those guys last year. So depth on the interior defensive line, like, can it be more than just Chris Jones? I think that you've got to think about that. But the rest of it, I think is pretty solid. I mean, this is obviously a team that was so close to a three-peat last year, right? And so it's when you look at like, oh, okay, like where are they weakest on the roster? It's not like I'm looking at like what the Giants roster have been or what the Raiders roster has been or something like that. Like it's tougher to find things that really wouldn't work because honestly, in every unit you found at least flashes of like, oh, okay, I've seen this work, just doesn't work consistently as much as you want it to. So I think it's still a solid roster. It's still very much the DNA that they had when they were going on their Super Bowl runs. It's basically just going to come down to like, can the players who are older, who are still there, can they depend on them the way that they need to? And I think that's honestly the biggest question mark for them as a team moving forward.
Yeah, because I mean, we're talking about, you're looking at trying to poke some holes. Okay, yeah, they could use another run stuffing nose tackle. I mean, we'll see. The three techs, they signed Jerry Tillery. They bring in Omar Norman-Lott. I feel like they can probably get enough out of there to not see a significant drop off from what they had with Tershawn Wharton. It's just next to it at nose tackle, you're dealing with Mike Pennell. You lose Derek Noddy, and I don't know if that's a huge loss necessarily, but you do need somebody to eat those snaps, right? You need somebody to go. Mike Pennell's I think 36 years old now. It's like you need somebody to go in there with him and help eat some of those snaps. But if my biggest question, I guess, is a nose tackle, especially like a rotational nose tackle, your team's probably in a pretty good spot. I like where you went at the beginning too, talking about like kind of wide receiver and even beyond an X wide receiver, just getting somebody to beat man coverage, I think is probably like the best way I can describe it. Cause Andy doesn't really love his X wide receivers. That's not a big thing for him, but someone that can beat man coverage when all of a sudden the zone beaters aren't working. And Travis Kelce at this point, we saw last year, he's not that guy anymore. So do you have that kind of go-to guy that can pull that off anymore? And that's the one thing that I think that maybe that they're not missing, but they're still hoping that Rashee Rice can become, and we didn't get to see it last year with the injury. So outside that though, yeah, I feel like they're in a pretty good spot the way they attack left tackle. They kind of filled these holes, and then now it's just kind of getting some young guys to step up into these roles.
No, I agree. It's kind of like how you have to look at it. Again, this is a team that was one win away from a three-peat. And so it's like they're right there in a lot of ways. It's just, are the guys who are still there, Juwan Taylor, Travis Kelce, obviously like some of the older receivers as well, but like guys at the linebacker level, like Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, obviously Chris Jones is a major part of this team. But then like, the guys in the secondary, like just Trent McDuffie continue to play really well because corner is just a very up and down position naturally. So, if he takes a step back, does the whole rest of the defensive back group really suffer because of that? And so it really is just a matter of the guys that they already have sort of as their cornerstones. Do they keep playing well? And I think that's just the biggest question for this team for 2025. Because if it is, they'll be right there. They'll be a double-digit win team again. Are they going to be a juggernaut? I don't know. Like even last year, like, yeah, okay, the record was sort of like overinflated, but like you could, I don't say this to like take anything away from them. Like they won the games, but you could have easily taken probably 4 wins off of that team. And they're still a good team. They still could probably make the Super Bowl, and the end result could have been exactly the same. But if the ball doesn't bounce your way as much, if some of those veterans maybe take a little bit of a step back, I think they're still a double-digit win team. But what does that look like? Like, is it a lot closer to 10 than it is, the 14 or like whatever? And then what does that mean for your playoff path and any sort of home field advantage and who you got to play early on and stuff like that? So that's my big question mark for them.
Yeah, I mean, like the Chiefs, very good team still. Obviously, like they won, I think, 11 regular season games by 1 score last year. Like that probably doesn't happen again, right? Now, I think there's like maybe a little bit of the team's DNA, like we kind of talked about, is very good where they're at right now. Like they know how to win. They aren't going to beat themselves too often. So yeah, they might always keep a very good record in 1 score games, but 11 in one season is kind of absurd. So like there was definitely room for improvement. I think they started off on the right path for that. And so like I'm going to ask like this question. It's going to parlay us into the next thing. Who do you think is going to start at left tackle for the Chiefs? Do you think it's going to be Jalen Moore, or do you think Josh Simmons, and again, we don't know about the health, so I'm kind of asking you just to guess how healthy he is, I guess, at this point in time too. But who do you think starts at left tackle for the Chiefs, and will the offense perform better this upcoming year than they did last season?
I think Jalen Moore starts. I mean, you gave him a good enough amount of money for him to start, right? And so
Right.
if you don't think he's a liability for you coming out of training camp, I think you probably just go with the veteran anyways, right? And you sort of
That's an Andy move.
you know what I'm saying? And it's like you let Josh sort of like at least have 4 weeks, right? You probably, because if you're going to start Jalen, you'll probably give him like 4 weeks at least. So you get the first 4 weeks of the season. And during that time, like, okay, now Josh gets to acclimate to like, all right, what's, practice like during the week? What's rehab like during the week? What's travel like during the week? Like and you just get this feel of like what life as a pro is going to be like, right? Because that's an underrated part of rookies start just being anything in the league, to be honest with you. I remember I went through this with Ronald Jones, Ronald Jones played in Kansas City, didn't he? Right?
Yeah, I was about to say Chiefs legend.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I was like, right. I swear Ronald Jones played in Kansas City, but
okay. Well, he was here. He was there. I don't know. Played's a little.
Okay. All right. That makes me feel better on all accounts. That I remember that he was there, and then that he wasn't a standout, so it wasn't embarrassing that I might have forgotten that. So he started his career out in Tampa. He got drafted in the second round by the Bucs. He was a true junior coming out of USC, but he spent his first 2 years. Oh man, where were his first 2 years? I can't remember where he was, but he was like, when he was going from USC to Tampa, an underrated part of why he looked terrible his rookie year was he was homesick. He's like, he was from all the way across the country. He was coming to Tampa Bay. He knew no one here. He had no family. He had no friends. And it's like, he was literally like, as a human being, like he was homesick. Like it took him.
Players are human.
Oh yeah, I know. And it took him like a full year to acclimate to like being a young adult, being a 21-year-old that just moved all the way across the country with no family, no friends, new job, new situation, all this pressure on you. You made it to the league, like all this kinds of stuff. And you could absolutely see that every time he touched the field. He was just not confident in himself and all that kinds of stuff. So I think that there is absolutely value in saying to Josh, like, hey man, Jalen's probably going to start the season as the starting offensive tackle. You are our offensive tackle of the future. Let's get the knee right. Let's get you ready. Let's get you settled. Understand what it's like going through a game day week, being a pro in the NFL. And we promise you the reps, the starts, the everything will be there for you when it's ready for you. And I thought, honestly, like that's how I would go about it. And I would probably start Jalen Moore, at least for those first 4 to 5 weeks, and see what happens.
I think that's the right move too. I think you got Jalen Moore in, and like whether or not he's can prove to be a full-time starter or not, because that's still relatively questionable for him, only filling in part-time for Trent Williams there in San Francisco. He at least has experience of starting games at the NFL level, so you let him start the year there. And I think that's some Andy Reid like to do. They like to let the veterans get a chance to go first, and then the rookies have to essentially outplay them. They have to earn the job from them, which is the correct way to go. So we'll just see how it goes early in the year. And if Jalen Moore's playing great, then okay, that's absolutely fine. You just stick with it and ride it out. But we've seen over the past couple seasons, the Chiefs aren't afraid to make tackle changes in the middle of the year if they have to. Like they aren't afraid to give some younger guys a chance. I know Donovan Smith got, a little dinged up, but it was also, they wanted to see Wanya Morris. They wanted to see what he could do 2 years ago. And they gave him a chance. And they said, they saw I think it was the Bills game and said, oh, okay, we're not quite ready for this. Let's go back to Donovan Smith for this playoff run. And that's fine. So they have pathways to do it. I think starting with Jalen Moore is the right thing. So either way, I think left tackle will be better than it was last year. Do you think that helps transition them to a better offense than last year? Or do you think it kind of looks similar to where they seem like they were struggling and treading water for a while?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's absolutely going to be better for them than what it was last year. I was at the Super Bowl. I watched that game in person, and I watched a lot of those playoff games too. And it's just like, it was not good enough to a deep playoff run and championship standard that this team holds itself to. And so, losing Joe Thuney sucks, and it's going to be tough, but you're hoping that you get some get some better play from. I assume that Kingsley's going to play the guard spot, right? I mean, like I feel like I read every depth chart. It's like
that's the plan.
Okay, so everybody's like penciling that in, and so you're hoping that he plays better, being at one of those guard spots instead of one of those tackles, and you're figuring out the tackle spot. And if that happens, like if Kingsley's able to play pretty well as a guard, I feel pretty good about whatever's going to happen at left tackle. I really do. Like, whether it's more to start, whether it's more for the long term, whether it's Simmons to start, Simmons for the long term. Like, I feel pretty good that they're going to figure it out by the time the season is over. So yes, I mean, that's a much better situation in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you get the better offensive line play. Rashee Rice presumably looks like he's on pace to be healthy, and that makes a big deal. I think he was leading the NFL in receptions when he got injured last year. He clearly looked like he was off to taking, I think, the mantle from Travis Kelce as kind of being the Chiefs' #1 option early in the season. Like, they kind of figured out that funneling the offense through Rashee Rice might have been the wave, and then he gets hurt. So having him back, hopefully having Hollywood Brown for a few more games. Like, there's a lot of pieces that are coming back that should allow them to be a little bit better on offense, I think, this upcoming year. And then we talked about it a little bit earlier, with adding Brashard Smith to the mix, having Isaiah Pacheco healthy. Hopefully the run game is not quite as nickels and dimes as it was last year. It's an efficient run game. They just had zero explosive runs at all from it. So hopefully you get a little bit more dynamic play both through the air and on the ground with the pass protection. It should look a little bit better, I would think.
Yeah, that's what they need. They need to be more dynamic one way or the other. That's how I felt when I watched this offense. Like, even when Rashee Rice was in there, like it felt very dink and dunk. Like, and I understand, like, you're evolving from, okay, well, if you're going to play too high and if you're going to play quarters and you're going to play deep on us so much because you don't want Patrick to be able to throw it over the top of your head, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to hit the intermediate in the short game. But it just felt like you still have to have the players to, okay, we're throwing it short and intermediate, but we're still getting some explosive plays out of it because we're setting up playmakers to be able to get a lot of yards after catch. They just didn't feel like they had that. It felt very West Coasty. Like, okay, here, all right, here's a 6-yard out. Boom, there it is. Okay, now here's like a 4-yard slant. Boom, okay, there it is. But like, you're only getting those yards that the ball is in the air by the time you catch it. It wasn't something that was a short game, but a dynamic one. So they absolutely need to get more dynamic this year.
No, I agree. And I think they said last year that was a big idea they had going into training camp. And all of a sudden you got Worthy and you got Hollywood Brown. And hey, we're going to throw the vertical ball again. And well, Hollywood Brown gets hurt. It takes Xavier Worthy, I mean, a good 10 weeks to figure it out, maybe find the sideline. And so, we'll figure out how that plays out. But like, he caught on down the stretch. So hopefully it's more dynamic. I meant to ask this earlier. I mean, listen, we got a Florida fan on here. So the Chiefs also signed undrafted free agent Elijah Badger. I'm going complete, right turn here. What'd you think? I mean, you're a Florida fan. So what did you think about Badger at Florida? Did you see him, possibly getting drafted? Just real quick, what'd you think about him? Because I'm a big Elijah Badger fan.
I'm pretty shocked that he did not get drafted, honestly, just because of how good of a vertical wide receiver he is. And I think that it probably speaks to where the league is right now, right? I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I think Badger probably gets drafted in the 4th or 5th round. But now there's just so many defenses that are so focused on capping explosive plays and vertical throws that we see so much less of it. So, yeah, obviously you have some vertical wide receivers that are still getting drafted. But again, I think that if we're talking 4 or 5 years ago, Badger is absolutely somebody that just gets drafted probably somewhere, I don't know, like middle of day 3, but goes undrafted because who he is a vertical stretching wide receiver. Even if he's sort of just that one trick pony, there's not a lot of teams who are like, with today's age of football and too high and deep quarters and all that kinds of stuff, we're absolutely just going to keep throwing it deep. There's just not a lot of teams that do that. So I'm a fan of his game. I think he's got good ball tracking skills and he's got good separation ability deep down the field. And so he's a good player for this team to stash sort of on their practice squad and see like, hey, if one of those fast guys, if Hollywood Brown, if Xavier Worthy, if one of those guys ends up going down, we might be able to bring this guy up from the practice squad and he might be able to give us some of those vertical reps.
Yeah, I mean, he's just interesting because the Chiefs functionally don't have like an ex wide receiver guy at all on the roster. Like, Andy always doesn't use them, but he plays them. Without Justin Watson now, I think he went to the Texans. They literally don't have a guy that they field there. And I don't know if Badger's going to necessarily be that at the next level, but he kind of played there, I believe, a lot at Florida. That was kind of where they stuck him a lot. And maybe I'm helmet scouting a little bit, but like his usage for the Chiefs potentially could remind me a lot of just DeMarcus Robinson, years back when the Chiefs had him. It was like, hey, you're going to run a lot of post corners, which you're good at. You love them double moves, and you're going to block a lot. And that's probably all your role is going to be. But it's just, he's a guy that intrigues me, at least from that aspect. And, it just happens that, D-Rob also went to Florida too.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, we'll do the defense and we'll let you get on out of here. Where do we think this defense looks? It's a lot of the same players that they've had over recent years. I'd say the biggest change, as we talked about, they lose Tershawn Wharton. The other big loss is Justin Reed in the secondary. And so this just, maybe if you want to talk about it or not, but like in my mind, since Spags got to the Kansas City, he went and got Tyrann Mathieu. And that was a big deal to him, was getting Tyrann Mathieu. Then when Tyrann Mathieu leaves, it was a big deal to him to go get Justin Reed. They wanted that leader on the back end. And even if you go back to his time with the Giants, they had Landon Collins. So it's a position that he has been big about having. It seems like Jaden Hicks is positioned to step into that position this year. So that's a little bit of a question for me. But outside that, how do you kind of see where this defense is at right now? And if you think they'll be better or about the same as last year?
Yeah, I think we talked about it already. Interior defensive line depth is something to think about. Are the linebackers still as good as they were last year? Like, is Tranquil, is Bolden, is Chanel, are those guys as good as they were last year? Because that is an incredible foundation to have at the second level, the way that those guys are playing last season. And yeah, losing Justin Reed is something that I was going to bring up. Now, throughout the draft process, it seemed like everybody loved Jaden Hicks. Like, it seemed like, oh, okay, like everybody not only loves this guy as a talent, but loves how he approaches the game. I thought he had a very high football IQ when he was coming out. And so I think he landed in a great spot with Spags. And if they believe that he's ready to sort of, take that torch and be that leader on the back end, his background, I think his scouting report sort of reflects somebody who would be worthy of them, handing that torch to on as a safety. So I think that how he plays and then what you're doing at the opposite corner spot, like Shamari's going to play nickel for you, but like, does Josh Williams play opposite Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson? Like, I know they have Nazeeh Johnson as well, but then it's like, all right, we got Noah Williams. They signed Christian Fulton. Like, who's playing that other like outside cornerback spot? So that spot, the safety spot, and then some depth in the interior defensive line of the places that I'm looking at for them.
Yeah, they've invested a lot in the defense since they've had Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid here, and which makes sense, right? You have guys that can mask issues that you have offensively because of the star power of what Andy can scheme up, because of what Patrick Mahomes can do, and so it makes sense to add a lot more picks and value, or like assets to the defensive side of the ball, and they've done that. And so it's a lot of the same guys that they have had, over the years. And there's just few guys stepping in. So I think we see a lot of the same trend. I thought last year, losing L'Jarius Sneed, the defense might take a pretty big step back. And like, while it was a small step back from what they were before, it wasn't significant until the cornerback injuries started to pile on. And then now they bring in Christian Fulton. You hope you have a healthier cornerback room. You also go draft Noah Williams. It seems like they're doing a pretty good job of trying to tread a little bit of water there. I do have to ask, I need you to break a tie, because some people are okay with this. I don't know how I feel. Number 8 on a cornerback as a jersey number. Is this like a great move, or is this like a warning? Is this like a red flag?
I don't hate it.
Okay.
It's different. Like normally when I think of corners wearing single digit numbers, I think of like 1, 2, 5, 7. I don't really think of 8, but I don't totally hate it. I don't totally hate it.
8 is the weird de facto. Christian Fulton's 8, which I don't love. Number 8, that's a de facto left-handed quarterback and kicker number. Like, that's what number 8 is in my mind. That is what goes to left-handed quarterbacks and kickers. And I saw 8 come through and it's like, ooh, that's tough, but hey.
I like 8 a lot more on a quarterback than I do a corner. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now,
it might be cooked. It might be cooked. They might be in trouble. This might be it.
We ruined numbers in the 20s for wide receivers with Sky Moore, and now we're coming at number 8 for cornerbacks here in Kansas City. So I guess this is where we get to be. No, Trevor, thank you so much. You broke my tie, and you did an awesome job on this podcast. Do you have anywhere that want people to come follow you or check out what you're doing that you want to give a little shout out to?
Sure. Yeah. The NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Myself and Connor Rogers covering the draft all year long. We're doing some draft recap stuff. We got the draft grades episode. We'll have some offensive and defensive rookie of the year drafts that we'll do over the next couple of weeks. And then we're digging right into summer scouting. So anybody who, loves the draft, loves the team building aspect of it, we'll start to build your database here for the 2026 NFL draft for you as well throughout this summer. So that, and then all the other work that I'm doing over at pff.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening to another edition of the KC Laboratory. We will be back next Monday. I believe Kent is back from vacation. Then if not, you guys will get me trying to struggle through hosting again. So we appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you guys next week.